Hey everybody, it's Brother Beast coming at you with another episode of Moto Moments. In this particular episode, I want to discuss groups, clubs, guilds, and gangs. Now, there's been a lot of discussion going on about that specifically in the biker world, motorcycle clubs in general. So I want to discuss my personal opinions on this subject, what I feel is the difference between those four different things. If you look up the definition of those four different words, they're very similar in their definition, so there's an understanding of, I can understand why they are often misinterpreted one from the other. To me, it's the very subtle differences that make the major difference between those things, those four different words. So I'm going to discuss my opinions on what those words mean and how they apply to the motorcycle lifestyle and the biker lifestyle. A group, to me, is just an accumulation of individuals in one place because they are attracted by a specific common interest. That's what a group is to me. Club takes that one step further. A club actually provides a organization for people to belong to so that they can organize themselves to practice, promote, and support that common interest. That's what a club does. And then we move on to a guild, which is one step higher than that. What a guild does is adds a level of security to the practice, support, and promotion of that common interest. And by what I mean by adding a level of security is most people in a guild have a lot more dedication to the specific common interest than those members of a club. Normally, under most circumstances, a member of a club isn't so willing to die for the belief in whatever it is that they're doing. A club is a lot more of a passive practice of that particular common interest. Whereas we're a guild, it's a lifestyle. It's the type of thing that whatever that common interest is something that they actually believe in, have faith in, live in that manner, and are willing to die to defend that particular common interest. And then on top of that, we have gangs. Gangs take that even one step farther, as where a guild is willing to support, promote, and practice that particular common interest, and take it so far as to where they're willing to die for that particular common interest. A gang takes it even one step further, where they're trying to force that common interest and that agenda on other people by using force, intimidation, and aggression and violence to force other people to accept that group's particular common interest. That's the differences for me. In my opinion, that's what makes that's what defines those different types of organizations. So when we get into a discussion when it comes to the motorcycle world and biker lifestyle in general, a lot of motorcycle clubs have gotten to a point where they're trying to discuss why they're upset about being labeled one of those things instead of the other. All the motorcycle clubs are called motorcycle clubs or MCs. Now, some of them obviously operate differently than others, and why they are labeled as motorcycle gangs on some occasions is justifiable, and others is not so much. From a law enforcement perspective, law enforcement is going to look at an organization that's involved in criminal activity as a gang. Now, I heard a statement from a 1% Outlaw Club member that indicated that just because they're an outlaw club does not automatically make them a criminal organization. The problem with that statement is it's inherently it's inherently a backward statement. The idea of an outlaw, the whole definition of an outlaw is operating outside the law. From a law enforcement standpoint, that's illegal activity and criminal activity. So you can't say you're an outlaw and then say that you're not a criminal. It's not the same thing. From a law enforcement perspective, an outlaw doesn't operate within the law, so you're automatically a criminal because you're not obeying the law. That's how law enforcement sees it. Therefore, you're naturally going to be considered, as an organization, you're going to be considered a gang, because a gang is just as a group of people who are basically involved with criminal activity. So in that aspect, you're a gang, and they're going to label you that. Now, I know a lot of the clubs that are being labeled gangs don't think they should be, because a lot of times they're going to tell you that just because certain individuals within the gang or within the club participate in illegal activity doesn't mean that the club as a whole is a criminal organization. Unfortunately, the problem with that is when you're discussing this type of this environment with a biker who is aware of how the motorcycle club world works, that doesn't apply either, because any biker knows that if you're a member of a club, every action that you do is a direct mirror on the club. So if I, as an individual, am a member of a club and I'm engaged in a criminal activity, then that automatically represents the club. And that's where we run into an issue, is because if you're, as a club, unless you are willing to disavow any individual, instantaneously disavow any individual that's engaged in criminal activity that's a member of your club, if you're not willing to kick them out instantaneously and disavow them completely, then by very virtue of the fact that you did not disavow them, you're condoning that criminal activity, and therefore, since he is a representative of the club, you become an accessory to that activity, and the club as a whole becomes a criminal organization because you're allowing criminal activity within the ranks of your club. So you can understand why law enforcement is going to label you a criminal organization and an outlaw and a motorcycle gang, because you are essentially behaving in a manner that is a motorcycle gang. Now, from my personal opinion, I'm not so along the lines of just because you're engaging in activities that law enforcement has declared illegal activities does not automatically make you a gang, in my opinion. If you go by the definitions that I previously went through, my opinion is if you're engaged in an activity where you're using force, intimidation, violence, and aggression to force your opinion on other people, that is what makes you a gang. Because to me, that is a violation of the very basic laws of nature. I have a right to life, liberty, that kind of thing. So if you're going to violate those rights for me, if I'm in an area wearing a patch that you don't like, and you're going to confront me with violence, intimidation, and aggression, then that is criminal activity to me, because you're violating my rights. And then you're declaring it as your rules say that I'm not supposed to do that, when those rules don't apply to me because I'm not a member of your organization. So that is criminal activity, because you're trying to use force and intimidation and violence to force your opinion on someone else. That's criminal activity, and therefore, as far as I'm concerned, you're a gang. So from either point of view, if you're going to engage in those type of activities, then you're going to be labeled a gang, and you can't get upset when organizations or individuals or the public eye view you as a gang. That's what you do. That's how you're going to be labeled. The problem that comes down to is when we get into regular motorcycle clubs that are actually operating as clubs, they're unfortunately being grouped into the whole motorcycle club label. So therefore, the public eye sees all motorcycle clubs as just criminal enterprises, and they're not. Unfortunately, there's a lot of clubs that are mislabeled as motorcycle gangs that are honestly operating as a motorcycle club. And unfortunately, that's not the way it should be, and that goes down to a problem with the inherent vacuum of information that the public has about the motorcycle world. And that's a majority the fault of the people that actually are in the motorcycle world. Bikers inherently are very independent individuals. We're very confident. We're very isolated people because we do everything for ourselves. Most of the friends that most bikers have are inherently going to be brothers or bikers, other bikers. So there's not a lot of information available to the outside world about what we do in our lifestyle. Then we add another level of problem to that when it comes to motorcycle clubs. Most motorcycle clubs inherently put rules and regulations in place where their members are not allowed to discuss anything that goes on within the club. Well, by adding that layer on top of the already pretty private bikers, then you develop this shroud of secrecy that leaves that vacuum of information for the public. The public has no idea what goes on in our lifestyle. So the only information that the public's going to get is that comes from the media. And unfortunately, since we have that inherent vacuum of information, the media doesn't get any of our information. The only information they're able to get is from sources that are going to give them information, such as law enforcement. So law enforcement is going to have the advantage on that by giving the media information, and the public opinion is going to be based on what the media tells them, which is based on what law enforcement informs them of. And that's where we run into a problem. Now, in recent years, I have to agree. The beauty of the recent years is I have seen a lot of the motorcycle clubs, and some of the major motorcycle clubs, which is really great, have actually invited the media into the inner ranks of the motorcycle club to get a better understanding of what our lifestyle is about and how we do things. And I like the fact that they've done that. I have to give them a huge amount of credit for allowing the media inside to see what goes on. And I respect them deeply for that, for allowing the media to finally get inside to display to the public what our life is about, what we do, and why we do it. I think that's a huge step in the right direction, and it's going to help a lot. The biggest thing I want to make sure of is that there is a definable difference from the public. The public knows that there's a definable difference between a biker, a motorcycle gang, and a motorcycle club. A motorcycle gang is literally comparable to any other gang, a common street gang. The major differences between a common street gang and a motorcycle gang is simply the fact that a motorcycle gang is more conducive to the biker lifestyle. Just like if we drop down to a club, a motorcycle club versus any other kind of club, any other public kind of club, like a car club, the real differences between a car club and a motorcycle club essentially comes down to where a motorcycle club just caters to the idealisms of the biker lifestyle. Those are the only differences. Unfortunately, in the biker world, since there is that vacuum of information to the public, which a lot of these motorcycle clubs now are actually starting to address, and we're getting to a point to where we can actually show that difference, is motorcycle clubs are all grouped into one huge pot, and they figure that just because the only thing they see is from the law enforcement, which is going to be basically just information that's viewable, that activities that the motorcycle gangs are engaged in, all motorcycle clubs are inherently going to be grouped into that gang label, because that's what law enforcement is providing to the public. That's all law enforcement sees as well. So even they don't even know what goes on in a regular motorcycle in our world, what goes on inside our world. So that vacuum of information where that public has no information at all has been a very big hindrance to the motorcycle world for a long time. But I have to give credit to these motorcycle clubs that have allowed the media inside to actually give the public a better understanding of what our lifestyle is like and what we try to do. That's another reason I do these kind of videos, to get a better understanding that there's different kinds of people in every aspect of life. Some bikers are very independent. Some bikers prefer the motorcycle club environment. Some bikers enjoy the independent motorcycling. Some want more of the gang motorcycle environment than they do just a regular club environment. So there's a lot of different things that go on inside the motorcycle world, just as there is that go on in any other aspect of society. But that's the kind of the topic I wanted to go over today. That's the discussion I wanted to have. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them right here in the comments section. I'll come back at you with some other videos on some other topics. But until then, live free, ride free, and keep your knees in the breeze.